Space nerds. Star Citizen had a record last year in funding. 2025, they made more than $150 million. And you could tell that they were trying. They were working at it. It's every year they put out their financials for the year, 1 year prior. So last year we got the 2023 financials, and we've been waiting for 2024 because it is interesting. 2023 was the first year that it looked like they made a loss. It was the peak funding year until last year. So that dip in 2024 had people wondering. And just in general, the financials of Star Citizen are always kind of interesting to folks, I think, especially from the outside. So the questions, they've been there. What's been going on? How were things going after 2025? Record-breaking year. You guys, you good? It's complicated. We're going to go through the financials I have found earlier today. I'm not going to explain everything here because, believe it or not, I'm not a financials expert. I wouldn't be sitting here streaming this if I was. I don't have any training in finances. I have done a little bit of reading through this and trying to figure out by searching what the heck some of these terms mean and how these reports actually work, what's being said. But I just want to be clear. I'm going to try and share the information with you. I'm going to try not to come up with too many of my own conclusions. I'm just going to tell you what I see. Let's start with looking at the monthlies. So things were going pretty well last year. If you go back to months in earning, you can see November was the peak with $32 million earned in 1 month. Which is insane, dude. But obviously it drops down towards the beginning of the year in Q1. So while it has slowed down, I think they're still outpacing all years prior. You can see in January they made 8 million compared to 7,778,000 prior January. This year they made 9,354,000 in February versus the 7,679,000 in the previous February. This March, they're currently on point for 5 million right now. They're making 4.6. Last March, they made 10 million. I don't think they're going to match that, honestly. I think this will be the first month where they do less than last year. That's besides the point, though, because we're talking about their long-term stuff. This was the first thing that I saw that actually kind of surprised me that this was here. I didn't realize people already knew about this. So a couple folks found this on Reddit last year that actually in 2025, there was a new loan in Star Citizen. And I can find that actually, I've got it written down so I can take you to where that is on the financials here. Just give me 1 second. So what I have on the screen here is that on January 15th, the company was authorized and issued 247,520 shares to an existing shareholder, thereby increasing their shareholding. The newly issued shares are of the same class as those already held by the shareholder before the transaction, with no variance in rights compared to the existing shares. This insurance does not impact the financial position as of 31st December 2024. On March 3rd, 2025, the group drew down $10 million under a loan facility entered into with an existing shareholder. Again, same shareholder. Well, maybe not the same shareholder, but likely the same shareholder. The principal is contractually due for repayment on December 31st, 2027, although the terms of the facility allow for earlier repayment within a defined window prior to that date. In addition, the lender holds an option to convert all or part of the outstanding loan principal into ordinary shares of the company as of the January 2025 investment value in lieu of repayment. Okay, so I am not an expert here, but of the notes and from what I've really been kind of trying to figure out and from what people have been saying here, this was another loan. Now, what I think was kind of backwards here was they said it was a loan to the shareholders. However, it's drawn down by the group. So this is another 10 million going into Star Citizen last year from an existing shareholder. Now, we obviously don't have names there, but I'm thinking likely the shareholder is the same one who's been putting some money into Star Citizen already. The Calders have invested, I want to say 80 million into Star Citizen. This is already well known and has been reported on multiple times by multiple people. 10% of the company at 46 million was their investment first back in, I think, 2018. But then in March of 2020, they made a second investment of 17.25 million, bringing them up to 63.25. Now there was an interest. There's a lot of details here that I'm going to skip over on this one, but basically they've now put another 10 million in. Likely the Calders. Again, my conclusion, it is not fact. It's not put down here, but I think it is worth noting that, like, you know, loans are being made. Who knows why? Company freaking financials are incredibly important. But there was a lot going on last year. There's another note here that is worth noting importantly. Cash and money. And how is CIG doing? They've got a few different freaking pages that show this. Let me see if I can find the right one. This is the group statement of financial position. This is everything that the company has. This is including, dude, I freaking hate this sound on this song. They are not publicly trading. No. Private companies can be invested in. So this is but private companies can be invested in, and they're still sharing their investments. Like, you don't have to share your investments as a private company. I think in the UK, there are certain laws that require you to. In America, it's a little more lenient. But they do report it to the UK government every year. Now, the important numbers on this screen that we're looking at are the current assets, which there are many. You see it totals up to 46 million here in 2024 versus 4 million in 2025. Total assets less current liabilities, 46 million versus in 2023, 45 million. Net assets, they are at 34 million versus in 2023, 33 million. So total equity, they have 34 million in equity, not necessarily cash, versus 33 million in 2023. If you do go to their cash, though, you will see that they currently have 5 million at the end of the year in the bank. So right now they've got $5 million of cash on hand compared to 13 million in 2020. Well, no, sorry, not right now. Not right now. This is at the end of 2024. I'm very sorry. I'm getting my timelines mixed up. Keep in mind, this would be right before we started this big 2025 push, right? With this huge funding drive. They had 5 million left in the bank from 13 million. So they had spent a little bit more and ended up a little bit closer to even. Now, if we go back up to the company statement of financial position, this is just the company in the UK, in Manchester. You can see here that they have 26 million in current assets, but they have $61 million due to creditors, falling due within 1 year of that date. Now, the net current liabilities takes them to 32 million of liability on the Manchester office. Again, this does not include the entire group. This is just for the UK office. That totally leaves them in 20 million in the red again at that office. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but this 61 million in liability from creditors is going to come up here in a little bit. Now, here's the big one. This is where everything kind of comes clear. Couts & Co. holds a charge over all the company's rights, title, and interest in and to the video game in relation to the outstanding loan facility. As of reporting date, the balance of the loan was, they say nil here. Contingent liability exists with respect to 1,877,840 issued shares as of 31st of December 2024. These shares have the right to put their shares back to the company for repurchase at a minimum return premium of 6% per annum on the initial purchase price. For 1,599,900,000 shares, they also have a value formula based upon 3 years average revenue leading up to the start of the exercise period. That 3 years average revenue is important because if you look at their revenue the 3 years prior to this, it was down around 100 million. If you are able to boost your revenue in the third year of that 3-year average, it's going to look a lot better, right? That average goes up a lot more. You're able to negotiate a lot better if you do need to get a loan or, negotiate a position with investors. That's important. For 277,500 shares, their put rights are exercisable on the 1st of January 2028 only. Their earlier put exercise date having now passed, I think they renegotiated that stuff. There's a lot of details here that I cannot pull up for you. I know normally with the development stuff, I can get all the context. I'm not even going to try and pull up the prior year's financial reports to corroborate this stuff. I'm mostly just reading through this part. Consequentially, consistent with prior years, the company has not recognized this put option as a financial liability measured at the net present value of the expected payments. If it were to do so using the minimum return calculation value on the investment for those shares, it would generate a liability of $34.2 million at December 2024, applying a discount rate of 10%. This would rise to $71 million based upon a multiple applied to an estimate of 3 prior years' revenue leading up to the exercise date. Again, there's that 3 years prior revenue average. So basically, the liability that they owe at $34 million at the end of December could rise to $71 million based upon what's going on with their income. If they're able to get their income higher, that liability, I believe it's saying here, would be less. The fact that the exercise is considered remote is the primary reason for not recognizing the uncertain net present value of this potential contingent liability. Also, given the nature of the put terms, as if exercised, the put proceeds would be payable out of available cash in excess of that required to effectively operate the business, and thus that liability would remain undischarged until such cash available cash became available. They don't have that cash available, so I can't tell you what that means. As of right now, they have a minimum potential liability of $34 million. That could go up to $71.4 million in liability. Based on the cash, they only have $5 million on hand. This is not a red alert, okay? This is not like everything is terrible, but I think it does show that, like, last year was incredibly important for them. This gigantic funding year was not a mistake. That was probably super important in them building confidence in what's happening and how this business is going. And if I am not mistaken, the exercise window for this, okay, the shares, their first put rights are exercisable between the 1st of January 2026 and the 30th of September 2026. So technically, the people who are owed these shares, who this liability belongs to, have the right to exercise these puts. We're currently in the period in which they could say, we want this money. They're not doing that. Like I said, I think last year was meant to build a lot of confidence in what's going on. Also, Squadron 42 is coming out this year. If there's one thing that I'm sure the Calders invested in with wanting to see how it did, it was Squadron 42. I don't think this is a bad thing. I mean, it's certainly a thing to be nervous about if you're CIG. And I bet they are planning this year and doing certain things based around this possibility. But if anything, I think this goes to show just how important Squadron 42 actually is here. Because Star Citizen has proven it can make money. But it's not enough money to, like, avoid these losses, because they're putting so much dev work into Squadron. And if Squadron does not return the impressive returns that they need for investors, then if those investors say, hey, okay, well, we want our money, that won't be good news for CIG. It's unfortunate because CIG originally started this all with the with the whole goal of not being held by investors to ship something when it needs to, but I don't think they can not ship Squadron 42 this year with this kind of situation. I hope that means that Squadron is not sacrificing quality to put out, because at this point it's been in the oven long enough. But I haven't seen anybody talking about this. After talking about this, I'm not going to try and say that I got all this exactly correct. that I know exactly what's going on. But it's pretty clear from this text that there is the potential of a $34 million liability with puts exercisable starting January 1st of 2026. And CIG currently only has, God knows where this page is, only has $5 million on hand. Those are the facts. And I think that's what we need to watch this year is, are they succeeding? Currently, they're doing fairly well. They're doing pretty good funding this year. I think they're going to be able to pass last year if they stay on this momentum, especially if they release Squadron, and if Squadron's a good release. But anybody who's discounting Squadron for not having a good release because all they care about is Star Citizen, if you care about Star Citizen, you want Squadron to have a good release at this point. These private investors are a primary reason we will have a Squadron 42 deadline. I think that their investment was always based around Squadron back in 2018 when they did it. And at that point, I think CIG had set in their minds that it needed to come out sometime between 23 and 25. Every year we go over these financials. Rather, 2 years ago, we went over the financials, I think, and we could kind of see that in the way they were spending. I don't think there's much I think just the way of the world is literally making this their deadline. You just can't have a game this big with this much money and effort put into it, not give a return for this long. It's got to come out. Given all this news, okay, I'm still bullish for Star Citizen. It might be because I've drinking too much of the hopium. You might say it's because I've got the sunk cost. Maybe it's because we've tied our career to this. All of these things don't really matter, given I did all of those things because Star Citizen shows signs of being able to be something good. It has always showed signs of being able to be a complete failure. That, is what's the point in getting involved in anything if there's no risk? This could be a absolute failure. It could go up in dust. It could have a crazy drama-filled ending, just like Ashes of Creation did. Who knows? Who knows where it goes? It's all a risk, but I'm sticking to it because, despite these risks and liabilities, if there is any game that I would be willing to put my faith in progressing forward from here, it would be Star Citizen. Now, that's partially because Star Citizen is only 30-something% complete, probably. But they're going to keep progressing on it. And I actually think that the next couple of years are going to be pretty good given the crafting, the base building that's coming in, the way they're getting storylines to actually work, and potentially Squadron 42. I am going to try and get somebody who is an expert in this, have a talk with them this week, and then make a more proper video about this to share with everybody. But this is the news that I wanted to share. I think it's a big deal. I think it's worth knowing.